film of Quentin Tarantino that had been in expectancy for a long while have been cancelled. The question is, will he still go ahead and develop another one to fulfill his promise of the 10th film? Or perhaps would he rescind his decision to go on making movies? We'll be delving into this story and find out what his decision is. And also, have you ever watched a foreign language film that have been dubbed in your language and just at the sound of how the actors are pronouncing the words, it takes you out of it? What if there's a technology that can perfectly sync with the actor's lips and you may even not know that this was shot in a foreign language? Well, we'll be taking a look at the groundbreaking technology that one film director has developed the director is Scott Mann. And last but not the least, do African films grants that they get in making those projects actually benefits their film industries back home? We'll be taking a look at all these stories and more right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions, both from the African front and the international scene. If you're joining me right this moment, I'd like to thank you for the audience. So let's get right into the very first story. So, filmmaker Quentin Tarantino is one of the most auteur-driven director you can ever find in Hollywood. Not only does he love movies, but when it comes to his own movies, the way he crafts it, he takes so much care into writing the stories, creating the character dynamics, and there is no film of his that has below the expectations of audiences. Even the one that may be considered subpar is still very superior in terms of dialogue delivery and how authentic the characters are. So for a long time, he did say that he would be making his 10th, and that would be his 10th film, and that would be the final. And after shooting Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which starred Leonardo DiCaprio and also won an award for Brad Pitt, we have been waiting anxiously to see him finally make the 10th movie. And the 10th movie that we were all anticipating after so many other rumored projects was the Movie Critic, of which he himself claimed he was developing. Now, upon a podcast that he went on, I think a couple of days ago, the podcast is called The Church of Tarantino. He did made some exposition as to canceling or pulling the plug on the project and also other issues. So let's delve into an article that gives us more information as to why that decision. So the article says, published in a Variety actually, it says that Quentin Tarantino says directing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel unenthused me needs to be in uncharted territory for final film, for final movie. I've got to not know what I'm doing again. And this is written by Jack Dunn. So that's Quentin Tarantino in your short. Quentin Tarantino is happy to pass directing duties to David Fincher for Netflix's highly anticipated Once Upon a Time in Hollywood sequel. During a recent interview on the Church of Tarantino podcast, the two-time Oscar winner said he passed on directing The Adventures of Cliff Booth because the idea of his final film being a sequel unenthused him. I love the script, but I'm still walking down the same ground I've already walked. Tarantino explained, it just kind of unenthused me. This last movie, I've got to know what I'm doing again. I've got to be in uncharted territory. He went on to praise Fincher, adding that his involvement is emblematic of the film's importance to Netflix. I think me and David Fincher are the best two directors, he said. So the idea that Fincher actually wants to adapt my work to me shows a level of seriousness towards my work that I think needs to be taken into account. Tarantino still serves as writer and producer on the project. He said he'll be around if the production needs him for anything. I'm moving back and forth between here and Israel, so I won't be on the set every day and everything. But yeah, I'll be around if they need me to do something, I will. In the same interview, Tarantino explained why his long rumored 10th and final film, The Movie Critic, was scrapped. Similar to the reason he passed on The Adventures of Cliff Booth, the film would have been too close to his previous work to be worthy of his final directorial effort. I wasn't really excited about dramatizing what I wrote when I was in pre-production, partly because I'm using the skill set that I learned from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood of how we are going to turn Los Angeles into Hollywood of 1969 without using CGI. Tarantino said, it was something we had to pull off. We had to achieve it. It wasn't for sure that we could do it. The Movie Critic, there was nothing to figure out. I already kind of knew more or less how to turn LA into an older time. It was too much like the last one. And that is the reasons why Quentin Tarantino has decided to pull the plug on the film The Movie Critic. So Quentin Tarantino is indeed one of the most exciting directors of our time or of several generations. He's been in directing for long, I think since the early 90s. I don't know whether the late 80s, but he's been a while. I mean, he's been around for a long time. And for every one of the 9 films he's written, produced, and directed, aside other ones he just wrote, you could always tell that he takes his stories very seriously. And in as much as he plays within his own kind of sandbox where every scene, you could tell clearly that this is a Quentin Tarantino film, there is something definite about it that he has rich characters. All his characters have depth to them. They're not only depth, but they are very original. You could tell that this is a character that is unique. They also seem to breathe life in a sense that they feel like real. They feel like they live in the real world with us because their dialogue are so akin to what we say in real life. And that's something exceptional that he's able to do very well in terms of dialogue. And one of the things I've come to realize is that in as much as you could tell that each film, particularly when it has to do with the characters and what they say and some of the actions, in as much as we know that this is the sandbox he plays in, he's worked in several genres. Even one time he was rumored to be working on a possible Star Trek movie. And unfortunately, people were excited about it. Myself, I was excited, but unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way we wanted. It didn't come out the way we were expecting. However, we know that if you watch his roster of films, he's done a number of genres. In as much as we would have wished that he had done several films so that he could play in every genre, he still has done a number of genres within these 9 films. I can say that from the Inglourious Basterds, we are talking about a World War II film, so definitely a war film or action film. If you take Django Unchained, you're talking about epic historical or slave film. If you also talk about pulp action, that's the crime drama. He's done it as well. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is actually a classic Hollywood film. So he's played in a number of sandbox, and I think he's done a number of films as well, and that he has done masterfully. Even when you go to Kill Bill is it's a samurai still within the gang or yeah, mafia crime film, but has an anime slide to it, particularly when he adores the Japanese kind of samurai films from perhaps Akira Kurosawa. So he has played in several genres of a sandbox, and I'm not surprised to hear him say that writing the adventures of Cliff Booth, or yeah, and it's so similar of a story that he did with the the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So it is much understandable. And he also said, I'm writing the movie critic whilst in the pre-production. He also discovered that it seems too close to what he did in the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And his question, if you read other articles and even listen to the podcast of which I did, which was quite interesting, he did say that it, we would actually watch a film about a movie, movie critic. And if you could get an answer to it, that would make sense. But I'm sure, knowing how skillful Quentin is, it will still be a wonderful film to watch. Because, funny enough, his concern is the fact that he seems to have walked the road before, considering that with the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it was set within the period of 1969 Hollywood. And when you look at the movie critic film itself would have been around 1977. So it's almost in the same era and actually the same place, Hollywood, meaning that he will be turning the whole street back again into the old time Hollywood, almost similar to what he's done before. So I think personally, the reason why he has opted to, pull the plug on it is as a result of the fact that it is not challenging enough for him. He knows the road very well, and I think, just as he said, this will not be worthy of his final directorial effort. And so I think many of his fans would want to see him do something exceptionally different that feels very different from the number of films that he's followed in as much as we watched the films he's done, of which all of them could fit into different genres, it still feels a little similar because you can easily tell that this is Quentin Tarantino. That is why people were excited when he said he would do a Star Trek film, or he's entertaining the possibility of doing a Star Trek film. However, it didn't come out the way it was. But I think, for one, it'll be quite interesting to have him do a project like maybe a superhero film or a comic book film. It could be within the superhero genre or whatever, but something that will be exciting. Maybe anything that is really outside the scope of genres that he has done so far. So I think that is something quite interesting. I mean, he's done a couple of movies, not directly directing it, but in terms of writing it, because you have a film like is it True Romance? I'm blanking out on the name, but he's done within the romance genre. He's done something like that. From Dusk to Dawn, which was the horror thriller genre. He was the one who wrote it, so, and he starred in it as well. So he's also played in that sandbox of a genre. So a sci-fi science fiction film would be quite interesting to have him play in that sandbox, or a superhero genre, or perhaps an adventurous film that dates, to prehistoric times, even pre-colonial times. That would be quite interesting to see him do. And as it stands now, with him pulling the plug on this particular film, we do not know which film he'll be doing next, except for the fact that I think he's working on a stage play or a Broadway play, which I think he's already written it, and I think I think about next week or so, thereabout, he will be directing it. So it's quite interesting how he's spreading his tentacles to explore other audiovisual medium or other arts or crafts. One thing we know for sure is that for most of his films that he writes for, he always converts the writing into a novel, and that is quite an interesting thing to do. So, but with the movie critic, it would have been interesting because previously I think he conceived it as an 8-part series. And that would have been interesting to see how he fleshes out his characters over the span of, let's say, 8 hours, assuming if each episode, has a duration of an hour. That would have been quite interesting to see how well he's going to flesh out the characters, give us more than we have always seen of him. But when you look at Kill Bill was quite interesting, looking at how it was just volume 1 and 2, even with the possible rumor that he was going to do Kill Bill 3, which unfortunately it didn't go that way as we expect. But at least we have known a number of his films, like Jackie Brown, which most of his films always stars Samuel L. Jackson, due to how he's able to deliver his lines in ways that he himself has said that no actor have been able to deliver the way Samuel L. Jackson does so. So that would have been quite interesting to have seen the movie critic in the serial form for us to several the last remnants of films or audiovisual production was going to do. But as it stands now, it looks like he is still sticking to the promise of a 10th film, but as to when, we do not know. But what we hope for is that perhaps he would rescind his decision sometime to come so that we can have more films from him, because he's such an exceptional director that we seem not to have enough of him because of how careful he chooses his projects. And for him, being not just an auteur director, it looks like for every production he does, it has to be a passion project for him. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it at all. That is why I think for his last film, he wants to do a film that is worthy of it being his last, his swan song, so to speak, and finally maybe put the directing skill down and focus on other things else. So it is. I mean, he's 62 years old and he's quite young. Hopefully, he would even maybe outgrow Clint Eastwood. So it will be nice to have him continue to still do films for us to enjoy. But for whichever reason, I'm sure he has a good reason why he wants to end at 10. And now him being a father, I'm very certain that he has prioritized being with his family, and that is wonderful. And I think we have to respect his wishes if finally he wants to drop it at the 10th film and make it his final. So what do you think about this particular story of the movie critic being cancelled? Do you think that would have been wonderful, knowing that he's already written the script? What if he hands it over to another director, just as he has done with the Adventures of Cliff Booth, which is being produced by Netflix and directed by David Fincher, and it stars Brad Pitt, who is just reprising the role from the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So let me know your thoughts, whether if someone takes it and directed, you will be interested in watching it. And I think for me, I will be, but I don't know about you. So leave your thoughts in the comment section below. So moving on from that to our second story, I don't know about you, but one of the things that we get excited about is when we watch films that we enjoy, we can understand the language without any barrier whatsoever. And recent times, even way back in the past, we get to be entertained by films not just from our culture, but from other cultures as well. And one of the barriers to sometimes enjoying the film is when watching a film and it's subtitled and you have to sort of divide your attention between you reading the subtitles and also watching the film as well. And over time, dubbing became the norm, where foreign language films which are shown in your country ends up being dubbed by the language, the country you are from, where they speak, they record their language ADR to slap it over the film. But more often than not, it doesn't sync well, and you could easily tell that it's the language dub does not really sync or work well with the actors, and that has been a problem and a challenge for a lot of producers and directors, and one director, Scotchman, whose film that he directed Robert De Niro in, one time wasn't dubbed well into another foreign language, and this, as a result, caused him to find a solution. And finally, he actually did about 2 years ago, and it is called DeepEditor. And DeepEditor is an AI visual dubbing software that is able to sync the dubbing sound or the language so perfectly well with the visuals that you can't even tell whether this was not shot in that language. So let's read an article published in the BBC, which explains further how that technology works. So it says that will AI make language dubbing easy for film and TV? And this is one of the films that he was able to perfectly convert into a foreign language film seamlessly. And it's called Watch the Skies, which happens to be a Swedish film and was made dubbed into English using the AI. And it's written by Suzanne Bain, the technology reporter for the BBC. He says that finding international films that might appeal to the US market is an important part of the Work XYZ films. Maxime Courtray is the chief operating officer at the Los Angeles-based independent studio. He says the US market has always been tough for foreign language films. It's been limited to coastal New York viewers through art house films, he says. It's partly a language problem. America is not a culture which has grown up with subtitles or dubbing like Europe has, he points out. But that language hurdle might be easier to clear with a new AI-driven dubbing system. The audio and video of a recent film, Watch the Skies, a Swedish sci-fi film, was fed into a digital tool called DeepEditor. It manipulates the video to make it look like actors are genuinely speaking the language the film is made into. The first time I saw the results of the tech 2 years ago, I thought it was good. But having seen the latest cut, it's amazing. I'm convinced that if the average person saw it, they wouldn't notice it. They'd assume they were speaking whatever language that is, says Mr. Courtray. The English version of Watch the Skies was released in 110 AMC theaters across the US in May. To contextualize this result, if the film were not dubbed into English, the film would never have made it into US cinemas in the first place, says Mr. Courtray. US audiences were able to see a Swedish independent film that otherwise only a very niche audience would have otherwise seen. He says that AMC plans to run more releases like this. And there in your short is the software that is able to help convert whichever film it is into a different language seamlessly, the visual dubbing seamlessly. So DeepEditor was developed by Flawless, which is headquartered in Soho, London. Writer and director Scott Mann founded the company in 2020, having worked on films including Heist, The Tournament, and Final Score. He felt that traditional dubbing techniques for the international versions of his films didn't quite match the emotional impact of the originals. When I worked on Heist in 2014 with a brilliant cast including Robert De Niro, and then I saw that movie translated to a different language, that's when I first realized that no wonder the movies and TV don't travel well, because the old world of dubbing really kind of changes everything about the film, says Mr. Mann, now based in Los Angeles. It's all out of sync and it's performed differently. And from a purist filmmaking perspective, a very much lower grade product is being seen by the rest of the world. So that's Scott Mann in your short, the founder of Flawless. Flawless developed its own technology for identifying and modifying faces based on a method first presented in a research paper in 2018. DeepEditor uses a combination of face detection, facial recognition, landmark detection, such as facial features and 3D face tracking to understand the actor's appearance, physical actions, and emotional performance in every shot, says Mr. Mann. The tech can preserve actors' original performances across languages without reshoots or re-recordings, reducing costs and time, he says. According to him, Watch the Skies was the world's first fully visually dubbed feature film. As well as giving an actor the appearance of speaking another language, DeepEditor can also transfer a better performance from one take into another, or swap a line of dialogue while keep the original performance with its emotional content intact. Thanks to the explosion of streaming platforms such as Netflix and Apple, the global film dubbing market is set to increase from $4 billion in 2024 to $7.6 billion in 2023, according to a report by Business Research Insights. Mr. Mann won't say how much the tech costs, but says it varies per product. I'd say it works out at about a tenth of the cost of shooting it or changing it any other way. So his customers include pretty much all the really big streamers. Mr. Mann believes the technology will enable films to be seen by a wider audience. There is an enormous amount of incredible kind of cinema and TV out there that is just never seen by English-speaking folks because many want to watch it with dubbing and subtitles, says Mr. Mann. So yeah, and one thing he says that is exciting, let me read that portion. He says that the tech isn't here to replace actors, says Mr. Mann, who says voice actors are used rather than being replaced with synthetic voices. What we found is that if you make the tools for the actual creatives and the artists themselves, that's the right way of doing it. They get kind of the power tools to do their art, and that can feed into the finished products. That's the opposite of a lot of approaches that other tech companies have taken. So so this is an exciting technology that Scott Mann has indeed developed. And one of the exciting thing about this technology, I did watch the Skies trailer visually dubbed into the English language, and you can't tell the difference because it feels like they actually did the film themselves in the original English language. But unfortunately, or actually the original language is not English, it's actually Swedish. So, and that is quite exciting how he's able to capture it. From where I'm from, from Ghana in particular, there is a terminology that have been given to telenovelas, or would I say soap operas that have been dubbed into the local language called Twi, and it's now called Trinovela. That's the term. The term is Trinovela, meaning that it's a telenovela that have been dubbed into Twi. And most often, yes, those who watch it get excited about it, but in general, the audiences can agree, across board, that it doesn't sync with their lips, because there are times that they may be saying something very short and the translation, whether true to it or not, seems either longer or shorter, and therefore makes it feel unreal. And more often, the acoustics, like that it's supposed to sound in a particular way, but it feels off when watching it. And that is a challenge that we have faced even here in our own country of Ghana. And I'm sure other countries are experiencing the same, be it in the US, in Europe, and other places, particularly when films come from other cultures to your territory. And even though you want to enjoy the film so much, the language barrier, pardon me, causes it for you to enjoy it fully. There are times that when you watch it all over again, that you watch those particular films all over again, you discover that it seems that you missed some scenes, because perhaps at the time, whilst watching it for the first time, you ended up, dividing your attention between the visuals and what is being said through the subtitles. And most often, people would prefer to watch it in that original language because it sounds better and the emotions feel authentic as compared to having the dubbed language. Now, with this technology, it feels very unique because when I watched the trailer, if I hadn't read this story prior to watching the trailer, I would have assumed that this is an English language film, except for the fact that yes, they I'm sure it was intentional to still leave an accent in there that feels Swedish. I mean, which however Swedish people sound when speaking English, it felt like that whilst watching the trailer. So, Watch the Skies was an example. I mean, for the article, just as the article said, is the first fully language film that has been captured, entirely in that regard. And so they call it what visually dubbed, film. So that is quite interesting because it sort of tracks or maps the mouth to the words being spoken. And the exciting thing is that it's not to take away the jobs of actors and I mean voiceover artists and all that. So that is exciting, seeing that we live in an age where AI could literally do everything. But this has it's just a tool for artists to use it rather than replacing the artist, which is quite interesting. Obviously, I'm sure others may prefer to use AI to create the sound to cut down on costs, but regardless, at least this does quite a good job of making sure that a lot of voice-over artists still have something to do, seeing that the estimations with regards to the streaming services coming on board, because streaming services actually travel wide from just not in the English-speaking countries, but to several countries. So the voice dubbing industry is projected to move from somewhere around the 3 point something or 4 billion to over 7 billion in 2033. So about 8 years from now, that is how worth the industry, the voiceover or the dubbing industry will be. And even though he's not placed a pricing on it, I think somewhere in this article or another articles that I read regards to this story, he did say that it's going to cost just a tenth of whatever shooting or production cost that will be involved when with regards to the dubbing. So it does really seem to be an efficient tool and will definitely help make a lot of films feel authentic to foreign language audiences who may be watching it without understanding the original language. So it is quite an interesting invention, I must say, a technology, a breakthrough technology to help the industry. However, there are concerns by one Alexandra. Let me see if I can bring the article up again. There was one concern about how that could affect. So this lady, Netta Alexander, is concerned about the monolingual film culture, which she did explain that is likely to curb the cross-cultural promotion or export that is supposed to happen. Let me just read it briefly. It says that, however, Netta Alexander, assistant professor of film and media at Yale University, says that while the promise of wider distribution is tempting, using AI to reconfigure performances for non-native markets risks eroding the specificity and texture of language, culture, and gesture. If all foreign films are adapted to look and sound English, the audience's relationship with the foreign becomes increasingly mediated, synthetic, and sanitized, she says. This could discourage cross-cultural literacy and disincentivize support for subtitled or original language screenings. Meanwhile, she says that displacement of subtitles, a key tool for language learners, immigrants, deaf and hard of hearing viewers, and many others, raises concerns about accessibility. Closed captioning is not just a workaround, it's a method of preserving the integrity of both visual and auditory storytelling for diverse audiences, says Professor Alexander. Replacing this with automated mimicry suggests a disturbing trend toward commodified and monolingual film culture, she says. Rather than ask how to make foreign films easier to English-speaking audiences, we might better ask how to build audiences that are willing to meet diverse cinema on its own terms. And that is quite true, to the larger extent of what she expressed in there. Because more often you would want to find the easy way out if you have all the options, an alternative option like this to want to watch film without, especially when you are so much in tune with the visuals and you don't want to miss the visuals. So if the actors through this technology, through this deep editor, can express it in your own language, you would watch it without choosing any other option. But I think it still means that the production companies would have those options available of choosing to watch it in whatever language it was originally shot in. And I'm sure you may even choose to just keep the subtitles and take off the audio dub. So what she's saying is true, which I agree with her. But in certain sense too, I'm sure it's all about making sure you can make enough of the box office revenue. And a lot of people will be turned off by the fact that it has a foreign language and they may not want to watch. One film that I watched, regardless of the fact that I watched in the original language, was Parasite. And the visuals were so captivating and so powerful that regardless of the language being in Korean, I enjoyed the film so well without even, at a point in time, I forgot that it wasn't in, what's it called, in English, and it was in Korean. I think all has to do with how powerful and a work the director does to be able to hold the audiences spellbound without even missing the fact that it's not being spoken in their language. So I think most often than not, to be able to maintain the original language without resorting to a feature that would opt for the visually dubbed language versions, that would also depend on the strength of the director to be able to put out a film that is engaging and powerful to keep audiences glued to the screen without missing a beat. And so that's where the thing is. And I remember growing up and watching the Chinese films or Asian films. A lot of them had a lot of action, and even though we understood nothing of what they were saying, because at the time in the 90s, barely do you have subtitles on a lot of films, and even if they did, because it came on a VHS tapes, it didn't have those features. And for those who had, yes, but we were so engrossed in the action sequences that we forgot. I mean, we didn't know what was being said. We made, we fill in the gap with our own imaginations of what a story was or is. I mean, being a kid. But what we couldn't forget was the action sequences. So yeah, I do agree with her I mean, clearly with whatever she said, but I'm sure it will be made as an optional feature that you would have to choose. And if you so choose to want to use that, you go with that. But if you also so choose to keep it in the original version language, just to feel the emotion and the nuances that otherwise could not be captured in a foreign language, that can be done as well. Because I have friends, when you give them any anime films to watch or a series, they would prefer to hear it in the original language than a subtitle, than a dubbed language. So it is powerful, but owing to what they've been able to achieve with Watch the Skies, it means that most people may not even know that this is not shot in that original language, or they may think that it's shot in the language that is being said, the visually dubbed language. So it is quite interesting to know. So let me know what you think. What do you think do you think this technology is really going to revolutionize the industry as we have it, seeing that it's been able to achieve what for so many years the simple or the traditional dubbing thing couldn't do? If you want to test it, I'll put a link to the trailer in the description so that you can watch it and let me know your thoughts on it. And tell me what you think about it. However, or if you have watched it already, if you're in the US and you've already watched it. What do you think about this technology? How how uh, um, how impactful is it when you watch the film? Did you even think it was not shot in English? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And from the US to Africa. So I wanted to do a story particularly on a number of things I've been pondering on. So this year in particular, we've seen a lot of African films that have made it big in terms of winning grants to support the project that they particularly want to do. And from the Sundance Film Festivals and other places where a lot of African filmmakers have had opportunity to either showcase their films in festivals and won some awards, or some pitching their film ideas or treatments and getting grants to be able to shoot the film. And I've been asking myself that with all these wins, how impactful is it? Is it really a win for the country that these filmmakers come from? Or is just uh, it's just an event that happens and afterwards the impact is not really felt back home? So let's talk about this. So I've been seeing, and I mean, even in Locarno, just a couple of days ago that ended, a number of films did win some awards, and not just Locarno. We can go back to Red Sea Film Festival in the Middle East. You can go to Sundance. I think Sundance and other grants award schemes all over the world. That a lot of Africans have been able to win, let me say, grants to be able to shoot their films. However, the question I keep asking myself is that has that translated in impacting that nation positively? Well, in certain senses, it has. So one of the things that it actually does is to give exposure not just to the filmmaker and his or her project, but it does also give attention from to the country that they hail from. So that's one of the benefits. Indeed, it does. From films that win not just grants, but films that also get opportunity to be nominated into certain prestigious festivals and all, by they winning awards. At least they get to know, particularly when it's shot in that country, the director or it hails from, they get to know a little bit more about the country they are coming from. And not just that, but at least it makes people pay attention that, oh, so this country do have a thriving film industry, or a film industry which, regardless of whether it's thriving or not. So it does give indeed exposure and then attract a possible global interest that could possibly lead into investment one way or the other in African cinema. And even for the person winning the grant, or for those who win the grant, that is even investment on its own. It may not be on a larger scale, but then it also opens the door for other filmmakers within that country to see the possibility of also doing same, or pitching their treatments or scripts to a possible film grant to also win an award. So it has benefits on both sides, where it attracts a lot of people to come and see what the country has in store, or vice versa, having filmmakers in the country see the possibilities of film grants that are available to them. One of the other thing is also skill development. And with skill development, you have a lot of grants who won't only give you the grant money, but they will be co-producing with you to ensure that you get the necessary skill set to be able to shoot it well. Some of them actually go with you through the scripting process, the pre-production process. And as a result of that, you get to learn a lot, particularly if you've not shot film on a level of that magnitude before. So it gives the opportunity for, I would say, skills exchange where the filmmaker gets to indeed be impacted by experienced filmmakers from the country that these grants are coming from. So that is one of the things that it does indeed help bring about technical and creative skill sets that otherwise the filmmaker within their own world or country may not have experienced before. So indeed it does. And one of the things too, it also helps bring, particularly when these filmmakers would use this grants to acquire certain equipment or put together a facility that would extend beyond just one production. It also ends up one way or the other benefiting other filmmakers who otherwise would never have had this opportunity. And therefore, as a result of one getting this opportunity, whereby maybe the person may buy a camera or put up a facility like a studio setup, it may in turn go a long way to help others. But one of the things I've been also concerned about is that do the governments of the day in the countries where these African nationals come from, who have been winning this award, do they see the potential as a result of the lights being shown with regards to these filmmakers winning the grants back home? That's the question that have bothered me, because this year has not been the year alone that has experienced this magnitude of films being shown all over. As a matter of fact, a number of these films that are being, these grants that are being won, this is not the first time they are being won, would I say, from Africa alone, but from several places. So at the end of the day, it is not just, would I say, a grant that is happening this year. In several years, there have been several people winning grants from all over the world. But the question is, how important do governments of African nations seeing these opportunities being granted to their own filmmakers? And I think that is where the challenge is. I mean, statistics have shown how much the current economy, creative economy, is generating, and it is somewhere around $5 billion. However, there is a potential for the creative economies of Africa to generate up to $20 billion in about 10 years' time. And that is something that I even think is it's even below the potential that they are stating. And I think it is as a result of a lot of governments not paying attention to what they have on their hands. And that is where the challenge lies. And I think we also forget that as a result of these individuals winning these grants and opportunities, it also serves as a form of cultural export, particularly when the productions, when they are done, they are actually premiered or screened first in the nations that grants, the funding for the production to be shot. And therefore, for those who know nothing about the African culture, when these films are shot and taken there, they get to have a taste of how the African cultures are, albeit fiction, if they are not so fictionalized and moves completely 180 degrees from what the culture actually is. So it does serve as a cultural export that I think I've been saying on this platform, that if successive governments would take it very serious, they will realize the potential and the power of film that has that tendency to transform their nation. In the 90s, in the 80s, I'm sure, even before then, a lot of the films, particularly from Africa that we watch, or let me speak about Ghana because that's where, I've been bred, was American films. And it painted America in a light that everybody wanted to go to America. Whether true to what we saw in the films is what is on the grounds or not, we adored America on that, for that reason of watching the films. We also watch Chinese films or Asian films, and in our minds, we could think, when we think about China and Japan and other, we all think about the martial arts. And to a point that at a point, certain times, we believe that every Asian could fight, is a martial artist. So it has the power of making individuals travel to places that they otherwise would never even get to. And I think for that reason, it attracts a lot of nationals who have seen these countries display their cultures through their films. And I think there's a lot more that can be done, like legal reforms, funding strategies that I think should be done by the African nations themselves and not just the foreign countries or from Europe and US granting this funding, which is well accepted and needed. But then I think as nationals, as African countries, we need to take particular interest in our own productions with the hope that we can help transform our own industries, because it is possible for our industries to be as fruitful as the mineral resources we mine on the continent. And I would say that our most valuable resources are not the minerals. Our most valuable resources are the people with the creative ideas to transform the nation. And I'm hoping that at least with the ongoing winning of film grants from foreign nations, our governments, whether they are from the south, west, east, or middle of Africa or north of Africa, we will take pride in our own directors and give them the necessary push. Not just by governments, but I think even private hands can get involved to help make Africa indeed win big, not just from foreign grants, but from our own people. So yeah, I mean, this is something I've been pondering on, having seen news upon news of African filmmakers winning grants from all over the place. And I've been asking myself, is it a win for us? Yes, partly it is. But on a broader scope, how does it impact the nation? How does it influence the film industry? And that has been a concern of mine. And I think that in as much as it gives attention to the industry, it still isn't enough. And I hope more can be done. Anyway, so this is my third story for the day. Let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think the winning of the grants by African filmmakers is impacting the African film industry from whichever nations they come from? And if they are, what do you think about the impact? Could more be done? Are we doing more? Or nothing is happening at all? Well, let me know your thoughts as you leave them in the comments section down below. So today being a Monday, definitely I'm sure you went to the cinemas to check out some films. And I do believe that you did enjoy your weekend, particularly with the films that you ended up watching. So with that in mind, as usual, every Monday I show the box office receipts of the best performing films over the weekend. And then, so we go to the box office mojo this moment, and let's check what the top 10 films are doing at the box office from the Box Office Mojo website. So in just this past weekend, we have Weapons at number one, which was released, recently, still at number one, actually. And it made $25 million, adding to the total, which is now 89,044,723. At number two, and still staying at number two, is Freakier Friday, which has made 14.5 million and has made a total of 54,776,339. Number three, we have Nobody, releasing for the first time, which has made 9.250 million. And number four is dropping from number three is The Fantastic Four First Steps, which has made 8.8 million and has made a domestic North American total of 247,037,549. So please take note, this is the box office for the North American markets, which include Canada and America itself. And number five is, dropping from number four, is The Bad Guys 2, which has made $7.5 million and a domestic total of $57,218,655. And number six, still remaining at number six strong, is Superman, which has made $5,285,000 and a total domestic of $340 million, 918,636. And number seven, dropping from number five, is The Naked Gun, which has made $4.8 million and a total of 978,162. And number eight, we have dropping from number seven is Jurassic World Rebirth, which has made $2.9 million. And the domestic total is $332,119,920. And number nine, dropping from number eight, is F1 the movie, which has made $2,660,000 and a domestic total of $182,807,225. And number 10, releasing for the first time, is Coolie, which has made $2,450,000 to date. So I'm just reporting on the first top 10, and you can check out the rest later as I drop the link in the description below. So having watched the top 10 box office movies that are performing, it is only necessary that we also do same for the worldwide box office. And so we go back to the box office mojo, and at the box office mojo, at number one, as usual, from since when it climbed, Neza 2 has occupied the first spot with $1,899,877,500. And number two, we have Lilo and Stitch with $1,028,420,106. Number three, we have a Minecraft movie which has made $955,149,195. And number four, Jurassic World Rebirth has $828,593,920. Number five, you have How to Train Your Dragon with $624,040,005. And number six is Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, which has made $596,513,515. And number seven is Superman with $594,518,636. Number eight, F1 the movie has made $590,007,225. And number nine, we have The Fantastic Four First Steps, which has made $468,737,549. And last and not the least is Captain America: Brave New World, which has made $101,577. So all too soon, I bring this episode to an end, and I hope you enjoyed this particular episode. And so I'll be coming your way again tomorrow with another exciting episode live at 11:45 p.m. every weekday, beginning from Sunday to actually Thursday, and to talk about movie news and reactions from the world over. So you can join me every 11:45 p.m. from Sunday to Thursday evenings, GMT actually, so that we can talk about movies. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.